welcome. Let's talk about Liverpool, and let's talk about this insane new story that's been reported about Andrew Robertson, our vice captain. Only one of two left backs that we have in a team already small, and a decimated defense. Okay, let's go for it. I saw this news yesterday, and I saw it today again. I thought I took it very well yesterday, and then I woke up, and I looked to see if there was any more news, and I kept seeing more and more news, and I got a little bit irate, a little bit grumpy, and I'm not gonna lie, because what is this? We have a defense. Let's not even look at the rest of the team here. Let's just look at the defense. A defense that is a shambles. An absolute shambles. On our right, we have Connor Bradley, injured for the rest of the season. Injured. Jeremy Frimpong. Now he's had 3 injuries since he arrived in the summer. 3. I'm not going to put that down as anything bad or negative about the player. I really rate Jeremy Frimpong, and I'm so glad that he seems to be turning things around since he came back from his last injury. But 3 injuries in a short space of time is a little bit alarming. Hopefully it was bad luck and not a sign of something a bit more serious, like injury-prone player. I've looked back on his career, and he doesn't seem to be injury prone. I could only find 3 various injuries from the whole of his career, so I don't know. Maybe I wasn't looking at a credible source, and maybe not everyone was listed, but he doesn't seem to be injury prone. I found no evidence of it. Those are our right backs. And then we have, Sospalai, who can play there, out of position, but he can play there. Jones has gone there, but then we can our midfield by playing a player out of position. Our central, we also have Joe Gomez, but Joe Gomez, the spirit is strong, but the body is weak. Sadly, he's one of those very capable, talented players who gets hampered by injuries. Very sadly, because he is a very capable defender, currently covering for Konate in the centre. And the central defenders, we only have Van Dijk, Konate, and Gomez. Robertson can play in that central defensive role, but we're about to lose him. And then we have our left backs. We sold Costas. We didn't sell Costas. He's on loan at Roma. Hasn't played hardly any except for sub roles. It hasn't gone well. They don't rate him. We didn't rate him. That's why we sent him out on loan. So we only have Kirkes and Robbo. Okay. So we're about to lose Robbo. We are basically relying on Van Dijk to be superhuman again. We're basically relying on Kirkes to not pick up any knocks, get ill, or cards, suspensions. What if he gets a long injury? We're basically screwed. We're in a block of teams in the table where it is very easy to lose a couple of games and go right down to 8th or 10th, to fall right out of that European ranking in the table. Chelsea and Man United are breathing down our necks. They are very, very close to us. I think United are 1 point behind us, and I think Chelsea are 2 points behind us, something like that. It's very close. We do not have the privilege to sell a player this window when they've told us we're not buying any. Except if an opportunity comes our way, except Gay wasn't an opportunity at all. It wasn't an opportunity. Paying 20 million for him wasn't an opportunity. So we basically relied on his loyalty to us because of the summer. And him saying no to any team that came for him and coming to us. And listen, he was always going to say yes to City. They don't say no to City. They don't. Right, it's not the only reason that we need to make numbers in defence. What we have struggled with this season, and it's been very evident on the pitch, is leadership. We've struggled with that. And that not only takes place on the pitch, it takes place in the dressing room, it takes place in training. Losing vice captain, one of our leaders, one of our oldest leaders, who's been there for a long time and won the lot with us, is disastrous. Selling a player to strengthen a team in the same league while weakening us is not acceptable by any stretch of the imagination. And I've heard reports that it's 3 million, I've heard reports that it's 5 million. That's petty change for a club like Liverpool. Keep hearing that we have these big ambitions. These big ambitions. Fact is, they dismantled the side, completely went into last summer with the intent of overselling players, leaving us with bare bones, not really thinking what would happen if we had some kind of injury crisis. And this is something that we've suffered with in previous seasons, was injuries. Somehow last season Slot managed to keep that at bay. And we won the league. We won the league with that team that we had last season. We won it. We won it with Salah. Of course. Would we have won it without Salah? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe. Who knows? Hindsight. Our next highest scorer last season was Luis Diaz. Yes, Luis Diaz. And I've gone back and I've watched clips from last season. And he was involved in so many of the goals. Involved in the build-up. If he wasn't scoring, he was assisting. It was... Now the story about Luis Diaz is mixed. Some say he wanted to leave. He wanted to go. Okay. I remember it differently. I remember that he wanted a new contract with a pay increase, and we didn't want to give it to him. We didn't want to give that to him. Bearing in mind he was our second to top scorer last season. Our title-winning season. We sold him to Bayern Munich, and we didn't replace him. Selling him isn't the problem. I like Luis Diaz. I think he's a decent player. But it's football. This stuff happens. You buy a player, he plays for a little bit, and he leaves. It's rare nowadays that you'll get a player who stays at a club. Players are just commodities, especially in this day and age, especially with teams like Chelsea, kind of leading this way to be making the club more of a business. I feel that Liverpool is following this path, especially with talk of looking for another club to do that whole multi-club thing that Chelsea got going on with Strasbourg, and I'm not behind that. I don't like that. I feel it rips the soul out of football completely. It's like being a vampire and preying off the weak. But that's just my opinion. So it stands to reason I wasn't a fan of last summer, to be honest. And I have been questioning. I wasn't a fan then, to be honest. I was probably I was like the only Liverpool fan that I saw that just wasn't really in favour of any of the transfers. Not because I was against them. No, I don't hate players that are at the club. I love this club. I've loved it since I was very little, and I've seen it all. I've seen highs, and I've seen incredible lows. I've seen many a game where we've lost and been humiliated by rivals. I've seen games where we've triumphed and humiliated rivals. I've seen players come, turn into stars, and I've seen them leave. And they want it bigger, and they want it better. Fair play, that's football for you. It is business, and the shelf life of a player is very, very short, which is why I understood why Isaac would want to leave Newcastle and come for United, but I wasn't a fan of the transfer, and I certainly wasn't a fan of the price, because last summer, when we should have been building on that win, when we should have been building, we tore it apart, and we're still tearing apart. No, I can't claim to understand Andrew Robertson's decision. He says he wants, or allegedly it's reported, he wants more playtime. I could understand that, because Slot does have a big flaw that he overplays players, and it's one of the reasons why we've had such terrible and so rife injuries this season. He overplays players. He could play Robo more, but he won't. It's just him. We're stuck. There's nothing we can do. I could understand it if he was going to a team that didn't have any left backs, or didn't have many left backs, had less left backs than we do. But the fact is, Tottenham have vastly more left backs than we do. We only have one. It's one. I've heard that if he goes, which he will, the club won't stop it, despite the fact that the club should. The club should. I mean, it's in spite of the club. This is not to the club's a surplus to requirements player. This is a player who is vital, who should be played more, to be fair. But it's Slot. What can you do? Now, this isn't a Slot out video. I don't think I have much energy to make that video, to be honest. I've boomeranged. Sometimes I'm more vehemently Slot out, and sometimes I'm like, oh, well, okay, let's see what happens. But then I came to a realization that this was a transition season. It was always supposed to be a transition season, despite, saying that we were going for bigger and better things, and we were going to defend the title, and we were going to do this, and we were going to do that. If you look at the activity in the summer, it doesn't point in that direction. And a lot of money thrown at very few players when we should have been focusing on depth. We should have been focusing on positions we needed strengthened. Our defense was one of those. We should have made Gay a priority. Signing, we definitely should have done that. And we didn't. We didn't do that. Right. So, and I don't blame. I know there's a lot of, let's blame Crystal Palace. Let's blame Glass now. Can't blame him for not wanting his player to go and leave him in the lurch. He did what we should be doing. By the way, Glasner, when he said, hey, nah, we can't let our defender go when we don't have anybody to cover for him. You'll leave us in the lurch. And he did that. He stood up, he made himself heard. It bought him a couple of months. Didn't do any good in the long run. He went in January, but still, Glasner did what Slot should be doing now. Glasner did what we should be doing now, as a team, as a club. Big club energy. Yet we're being packed away. I hear these rumours about Spurs wanting Curtis Jones. Another one. I can't help but feeling that Spurs are trying to be a little too much like Liverpool these days, especially with employing Heitner as coach under Frank. I don't understand. Because I see Arsenal. And I see that they built on a squad and they grew a squad. They focused on weaknesses they had and they tried to fill it. Whereas we did the opposite. And it's one of the reasons why Arsenal are in the position that they are in now. It is. Yeah, they found a solution to scoring. They have trouble scoring. So they worked on a method that they could capitalize on. There's nothing wrong with that. It's capitalizing on a positive that a team has. You find an asset and you prey on it. You use it. You must do everything you can to win. In the end, it doesn't matter if their strikers don't score. It matters that they win. It matters that they get 3 points. The how doesn't matter. When you see the table, you don't see the pretty, attractive football. You only see the numbers. And there at the top of the table, in the Premier League and in Europe, is Arsenal. If they can stay there. But I do believe, in at least the Premier League, they will win. This is their season. We didn't do that. We went into a transfer window to take it apart. Now, I'm not against selling players, but there was no need to sell all the players. There's no need. And the players we bought, I'm not talking about Frimpong, I'm not talking about Kirkes. I'm talking about spending 125 million on an injury-prone striker. There's no hate to Isaac at all, none. But he's not worth 125 million. He's not. He hasn't played that many games for us. He's been injured most of the time, and he's scored very, very little. That his lack of game time and his lack of scoring is because of his injuries, and he's injury prone. This is something, sadly, despite being a very talented footballer, injuries is just something that come with him. And I think spending 125 million on one player who is injury prone is not wise by any stretch of the imagination, especially when our squad is very small. We got him on transfer deadline day, so we'd already sold a whole bunch of players. We knew what we needed. They ummed and ahed all through the transfer window for a measly extra 5 million for Mark Gay, but willingly spent 125 million on an injury-prone striker. It's bad business. You could buy 2 or 3 players from that 125 million. Ekitike, complain about Ekitike. I feel that he's worth the money. He's more than stepped up. There was a lot of talk about how he would be overshadowed by Isaac, but he has shown that he is a very, very capable player. And one could argue better than Isaac. We'll only know that in the long run. But this season, he has been worth the money. One of the positives to watch. Florian Wirtz. Now, again, this isn't about the player. Florian Wirtz may have started a little slow, but my goodness, he really has kind of stepped up. And each game he kind of gets a little bit better, and I watch him move on the ball and how he passes and how he thinks. Very capable player. He's very young. He's 22. He wasn't worth, I can't remember, it was something 100 million that we paid for him. Something like that. He's not worth that. Very capable player. I'm not saying he isn't. Very talented, but not worth that price tag. I'm sorry, but he's not. So we spent over 200 million on 2 players, when again we could have got 5 or 6 players with that. Now you could argue, in the case of Florian Wirtz or Isaac, but could we have gotten players of their skill set? Well, we've done it before. We've done it before. We've got players on a budget when we had Klopp. You got Susblai. I remember those transfer windows when we were struggling against Chelsea to get Lavia and Casado. They chose Chelsea. When we wanted Bellingham, but Bellingham wanted Real Madrid. But there's something wrong at this club, and I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. And when you go into a January window with no intention of buying players, but you are more than happy to sell vital members of the squad. Now you can say, hey, but Robbo isn't playing, he wants playtime. Tottenham have more left backs than us. He has less guaranteed playtime than he does here. It makes no sense. And if Slot wasn't such a stubborn man, he would play more. But Slot doesn't rotate. Slot plays the same players into the ground. You're not going to rest a player. You're gonna play him consistently every single game. And now this is exactly what's going to happen with Kirkes. Because even if Costas comes back from Roma, which apparently they can cancel that loan, but they can't cancel Harvey Elliott's loan. I don't know. It's all a mess. A big mess. A huge, big mess. And I watch these things unfold, and it doesn't feel like my club anymore. And like I said, I have supported this club for a very long time. I remember the Roy Hodgson days, okay? I watched Steven Gerrard leave when he didn't need to. He shouldn't have gone. He should have retired with us. I've seen the worst games. I've seen the best games. I've seen trophies lifted and made history. I've seen the worst things on a pitch. I have seen the worst players to ever put on a Liverpool shirt. I've seen the best. But this season, I was aware that things weren't going to be great. It didn't make sense that it would. And then we started playing, and it wasn't convincing, those first wins, and then it all went tits up, and there was just loss and loss and loss and loss and loss, and then Nottingham Forest beat us at Anfield 3-0 in one of the most humiliating things I've ever seen. Because while, previously we'd lost at Anfield, but Anfield was always this place to be feared. You don't want to go to Anfield to play Liverpool. It was a fortress. Like I said, there were losses, but in the great scheme of things, not that many. It was a fortress. There are teams, you don't want to play them, like Newcastle at St. James's Park. That's always a daunting one. The crowd becomes the 13th man on the pitch. It's different now. It's different. I don't know, it's 13 games without a loss, but it hasn't been really convincing. Marseille was good. We'll have to see today if Slot can grow on this, but as the season progresses, I see more and more that any optimism is not wise to have. And this transition will be ongoing for a couple of seasons. So a trophy-winning team last season, and then we were right into a transition. Possibly the only football team that I have ever witnessed who won a cup and who, instead of defending it, deliberately tore it all up.